Okay. So I'll just give a little bit of an introduction to Brahma Muhurta because I don't want to embarrass him or anything like that. But I've done Brahma Muhurta for what, 20 plus years now, at least more than that. And Brahma Muhurta, he's what I call a pundit. He's very devoted to understanding, particularly Gaudiya, or Vaishnav liturgy, not just Gaudiya Vaishnav liturgy, but Vaishnav liturgy, meaning worship methods, etc. He's basically devoted himself to systematically studying philosophical and religious culture for over 20 years. Based in New York City, he serves as a priest officiating in weddings, rites of passage, other Vaishnav rituals, including he's done a few temple openings, Americas, Europe, India, etc. He was initiated by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj when he was 17 years old, and later accepted Brahmin initiation. He lived as a brahmachari for a few years, and then he began to study and perform temple rituals. And he was actually requested by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj to perform his last rites, which is quite an honor to have your guru ask you to do that. So that was quite a significant thing in his life. And when were you married, Brahma? I can't remember what year you married.
2001.
2001. And your wife's name?
Mangalarti.
Mangalarti, that's right. Very nice Vaishnavi. And then he's been guided in Vaishnav liturgy by various teachers, like both devotional and non-devotional. He did some studies in Sridhar Mayapur, and then also under Gaurkesha Prabhu in Sri Rangam and Maui. And he continues to study Pancharatric Agamas and various temple rituals under different Vaishnavas, particularly in Melkote. Yeah, so he's very, very knowledgeable. And Brahma, your topic is
The
how the
relation.
rituals.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Maybe
No,
maybe I'm misprepared for the wrong topic. So
no, you're speaking it, so you may as well tell me what it is.
okay, it's the relationship between the mantra and the Archamurti.
Okay, great. That sounds like a pretty interesting topic. Thank you. Go ahead. It's all yours, Prabhu.
Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. So I'm going to try and compress everything. I know we have 28 minutes. I tend to have too much information, but I also am from New York, so I speak very quickly. So I'm going to try and slow down because I know English is not the first language for everyone, and I want to be able to let everything be absorbed appropriately. So the topic is the relationship between mantra and the Archamurti. So we'll talk about that, and also what is the relationship, or what is the reason why one needs to have mantra diksha. That is the adhikara for performing deity worship. So before we can talk about that, or I guess moving into talking about the reason, like we'll talk first about the adhikar. So we have to talk about this term pancha samskara. And what is pancha samskara? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in his essay on pancha samskara, this is the process of initiation. Like samskara means impression, pancha means 5, so 5 impressions. This is an idea and a concept that is not just specific to those following Bhaktivinoda Thakur or those in the Gaudiya tradition. It is across sampradayas, this idea of pancha samskara. Amongst the Sri Vaishnavas, it's called samashrayanam, I believe, but pancha samskara is synonymous. I believe also with the Madhvas, they'll call it pancha samskara. So it's the basic structure of initiation as a Vaishnava. So there are 5 parts. The first is called tapa, and if anyone wants to, I would suggest you find this article. It's around everywhere on the internet now. It's a lot easier than when I started doing research on these things, trying to source stuff. So the first part is called tapa. This is branding of the Shanka and Chakra on one's body with a hot brand. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that now, by Mahaprabhu's mercy, we can just use chandan. In other sampradayas, they're still they do a yajna, they take the Shanka and Chakra, they leave it in the fire, and then they brand the shishya. This is like how, at least in the West, they brand cattle. It's declaring you're the property of the Lord. Now, other people have mentioned that, we don't really see so much. In some places, you'll see, at least amongst the renunciates, amongst sadhus, they'll use stamps with Gopi Chandan for Shanka Chakra. But other people, other scholars have pointed out that amongst Gaudiyas, the item that is more closer to this idea would be the neck beads. That is why, we get so bent out of shape when people don't wear neck beads, who are practicing as devotees, or why that's stressed so much. Because this is our way of branding ourselves. You notice amongst other sampradayas, they may or may not have neck beads, but because their bodies are physically marked, it may or may not be stressed as much within those particular traditions. The next part, so that was number one, tapa, the symbol of the Lord, whether it's our tulsi neck beads or the branding. Next we have pundra, tilak. So this is the symbol of our allegiance. And, according to our different tradition, our different lineage, our tilak may be slightly different, but it's branding us according to the lineage that we're in. Then we have Nam. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes that this is the name of Sri Hari being given to the disciple. Across all sampradayas, Nam also means taking a new name, a name of Hari. This is us giving up our ahankara, our previous idea of who we are, our name that we were born with, and taking a name and an identity that is connected directly with the Guru and with Krishna. So that's what that symbolizes. Although I tend not to like the term symbolize, because it's almost an impersonal idea, that symbols are not necessarily directly connected to an object or a thought or whatever it is. They can exist on their own, but it is that we are now the property of the Lord, directly connected to the Guru. So that was 1, tapa, branding; 2, pundra, tilak; 3, nama, name of Hari, either for chanting and for ourselves. And then mantra is the 4th one. Mantra is the sonic form of the deity. It is directly the deity himself. So in this particular case, we, as in ISKCON, we receive a number of mantras, 7 mantras for our second initiation. We get the Gayatri mantra, the first line of these mantras that we receive, which is a Vedic mantra. And there's a whole history to that we don't have time to discuss. And then we have 6 other mantras. 3 of them are Mula mantras, and 3 of them are mantras in the Gayatri meter. The essential mantra within the Gaudiya tradition is the 6th mantra, the Gopala mantra. Okay? This starting with Kling Krishnaya, this mantra. This is the essential mantra. So all traditions will have their essential mantra, and then they'll have other mantras that come with it. But that, across the board, is this 18-syllable Ashtadashakshara mantra, is the essence of everything. So that is the sonic form of the deity. And we'll talk about that in a second. Then the fifth, so tapa, branding, kundra, tilak, nam, name, mantra. So there's this distinction. There's nam and there's mantra. So oftentimes when you see written, one is doing mantra japa, it is not the same thing in most cases as nama japa. Okay? Mantra japa, when they're describing someone doing mantra japa, it is generally of the Gopala mantra or other Pancharatrika mantras. Nama bhajan, nama japa is Mahamantra. Then the fifth part is archa. The guru gives the murti, the archa murti, not just murti. Murti is a generic term for form. It does not mean an installed deity. Archa is specifically describing the expansion from the Antaryamin, that is the external manifestation of the mantra. Okay? So the Archa Murti, the Murti that way, the deity form is the external manifestation of the mantra. So the guru first gives the mantra, the Gopala mantra, and then gives the form, the physical external form of the mantra. Okay? So by giving the guru, giving the mantra, the guru is revealing the mantra or deity, or revealing the mantra / deity to the shishya, to the disciple. So now in an elaborate, or actually, yeah, in an elaborate initiation, as described in texts like Hari Bhakti Vilas, or other agamas like Jayakya Samhita, of which Hari Bhakti Vilas is quoting, when it says Narada Pancharatra, Agama, or Pancharatra, those are verses from the Jayakya Samhita, which is a text that's used in Kanchipura. So in these elaborate initiations, which are basically don't exist at this point, but they give structure for us to understand what is happening in a smaller way. The guru, over a number of days, is purifying the disciple and getting them ready for the mantra. Then a mandala is drawn. What is a mandala? And we're going to talk about that in a second. But the mandala is the diagrammatic form of the mantra. It is the mantra in a geometric form, okay, and drawn out. And different parts of the mantra are installed, as well as different parishads, different associates of the deity are installed around. So a large mandala is drawn in this elaborate form. And then the shishya is blindfolded. Then by the hand, the guru takes the disciple into the mandala, takes off their blindfold, and then shows them the spiritual world, of which the mantra is the center. This is to give them an idea of what the mantra is. It's not just something that you have to have this mantra in order to worship the deity. The mantra is the deity. It is our direct connection, our sadhana in connecting to the deity. It's essential for doing deity worship, not just as a formality. So sometimes people will think, oh, I don't need to have this because I'm not into rituals, or this is just a formality. No, it's the essential part of our adhikar for worshiping the deity, is having that mantra and carrying that mantra and keeping the mantra alive in our practice by japa, by consistent japa. Okay. So there are different types of mantras. We have bija mantras. So these are like clean, cream, chlaum, all these short seed mantras. Then we have mula mantras. After a seed, you have a root. And so this is Gopal mantra, Gora Klingoraya Namaha, etc. Then you have what are called Pinda mantras, which are a little bit longer, not quite Gayatri mantras. Then we have our Gayatri mantras, which are technically, anyways, they're technically not Gayatris per se. The Gayatri is this one Vedic mantra, but they're using their words in the Gayatri meter. Then we have Mala mantras, which are even longer and it keeps on going and going and going. And all of these are used for different purposes until you have something like a 1,000-syllable mantra, or etc. Now, Gopala mantra is specific to our sampradaya. Okay? This is described in Brahma Samhita, that they give a whole explanation. There's a lot of geometry talk. And what that is where it describes the land of Vrindavan. The center of it is this hexagonal center. Hexagon is a shape with how many sides? 6 sides. The Gopala mantra is divided into 6 parts. There's the bija, and then there are 6 parts. Okay? The bija is the center of Radha Krishna, and that's the center of that hexagon. That's the center of Vrindavan. It's the locus of everything, is Radha and Krishna. Then the 6 sides are the 6 limbs of the mantra. So in other sampradayas, like the Sri Vaishnavas, they have mantra, they have 3 mantras, 3 main mantras when they get initiated. Om Namo Narayanaya, Shriman Narayanam Charanam Sharanam Prapadye, and Charama Shloka, Dharma Sarva, what is the mantra? Why I'm losing it. I'm not a Sri Vaishnava, but I know the Gita enough. Sarva Dharmam Pratyajamam Ekam Sharanam Praja, like that. Those are their essential mantras, which contain all of their ideas and philosophy. In other ones they have it. For us, it's the Gopal mantra. Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes, Kleem is the center, Govinda is the intrinsic form of his pastimes, Gopi Jana is the form of his intimate attendants, Bhalabhaya is the self-surrender in the sentiment of the Gopi Jana, Swaha, Swa is the pure soul, and the 6th is Ha, the nature of the soul to perform Krishna Bhakti. Okay, so this is why, for instance, and I only have 9 minutes left, so I'm going to try and summarize. I have one other thing I want to mention. How does that connect to the deity? And I'll talk about that in a second. But actually, let me talk about that first. So in the Agamas, in the Pancharatra, it's described, there are 4 forms, 4 external manifestations of this mantra. Okay? We have and the first 3 are temporary. So when we install a deity, oftentimes in elaborate installations, and I'm using this term elaborate because this is what is given in text, and then sometimes, in some cases, it's shortened for different reasons, whether it's due to the revelation of the Acharya, due to practical application, or other reasons, or a combination thereof. So there are 4 forms. The mandala, like we described before, the diagrammatic form of the mantra. The kumbha, this is the pot with the coconut. So mantra is invoked into the water, mixed with different things, and it's almost like a liquid mantra. And we need that for something later. Then we have the homa, the fire. The mantra is invoked in the fire, and the deity is there in that fire directly. Then the last, after worship, like for example, in an installation, after worshiping those 3 forms, while also purifying the murti, the form, all of those 3 forms and the, what's the word? anyways, the energy that is accruing through all of that worship and mantra japa that's continually going during this Pratishta ceremony, it's merged with the Murti, becoming the Archamurti. And from that, then the Archamurti expands out of the Antaryaman into the Murti, and Nyasa is performed, which is placing the mantra on different parts of the body. So first we do what's called Nyasa Homa, which is destroying all the material elements of the deity by chanting the mantra backwards. Then, chanting it in the correct way, we're rebuilding the deity out of purely spiritual elements and out of what? Out of the mantra, out of the Gopala mantra. So this is why the mantra is intrinsically related with the Murti, because it is essentially composed of the mantra. And this is the reason why, like, one person asked once, well, this person is initiated. Okay, we have some person in our congregation who's initiated as Sri Vaishnava. Can he perform deity worship? Or she could, or she. Of course, they can perform deity worship, but not in the temple, not in our temple, because they don't have the same mantras that we have. The mantra is directly connected to the Murti. So their adhikar is not there. They can do worship. They would not allow us to do worship. I mean, for so many reasons, but essentially, because we do not have the same mantras. We don't have the same sadhana. We don't have the same conclusions. The mantra has the conclusions of our entire sampradaya in it. So it's intrinsic in that process. So I went over a lot of stuff really quickly. We only have a few minutes, and I know Shrama Priya Mataji mentioned I should have some time for questions. So should we stop for questions or comments or discussions? It's much more interesting.
It's up to you, Prabhu. It's a really interesting topic. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to ask.
Otherwise, I can keep going.
Narayani's raised a hand. Yeah. Yes. Oh, actually, no. It's Radha Dasi. You have a question, Radha Dasi?
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Oh, that I can ask something. Thank you for the explanation. It was really a lot of stuff to hear, but thank you. But as I have understood, how is it when you perform deity worship at home and deity worship in the temple? Is it the same that is it the same connection, the mantra with the deity?
Why not? Why would there be a difference? I'm asking. I don't see why there would be any difference.
Okay, because I know that the temple standards are different. So when I'm used to do my deity worship of Shri Radha Madhava at home, I used to perform to offer the upcharas, the dhub, the deep, and all the other paraphernalia. But is there some difference if you want to do this in the temple?
As far as mantra and the relationship between the mantra and the Murti, there's no difference. Standards are a different thing. That's something that's established, whether it's in the Pratishta, what you're making your particular standard. And there is this distinction in the Agama between Archa, Griha Archa Pratishta, and Temple Pratishta. So the deity in the home as opposed to the deity in the temple. And what that means is not that there's a difference in the essential nature of the deity and its relationship to the mantra, but rather just the procedure may not be as elaborate. It's a little bit more merciful towards the grihasta because it's a different type of situation.
Okay.
So otherwise,
no. May I add something here, Brahma?
Yeah, of course.
Bhakti Pragar Keshav Maharaj in his introduction to the Archana Padati, which was like the first formal Archan book we had in ISKCON, he mentions that in the home environment, the worship of the deity is centered around the needs of the family, whereas in the temple environment, the worship is centered around the needs of the deity. So in the temple worship, the deity is worshipped more as a king, whereas at home it tends to be a little bit simpler.
He's a guest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard saying he's like a guest. So guests have to be a little sensitive to their hosts.
and also you find like you know, if devotees have deities at home, for instance, that they may be doing shift work or something like that. So naturally things will have to be a little bit fluid like that, you know. So yeah. Vrindaraniya Mataji, you have a question for Brahma Muhurta Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for your explanation. And as I understood, in our Sampradaya, we can use only Gopala Gayatri mantra to worship deity as Krishna and Jagannath. Is it correct or not? Or we can use other mantras, begin from not clean? Please answer this question.
Okay, so this is a good question. So to clarify, my point is just that the Gopala mantra, and I want to make the distinction because it's a common thing. People will say Gopala Gayatri. It's not a Gayatri, but the Gopala mantra, Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopi Jana Vallabhaya Swaha. This is the Gopala mantra. That's the essential mantra, the sort of main mantra. But all these other mantras we use in our deity worship. And this also, what mantra is used in the deity worship, depends on what's done. Traditionally, it depends on what's done in the installation, what mantra is used in the installation. It should be continued. So whatever is the standard in the temple, what mantra is used in the temple, whether it is, like, say, for instance, Jagannath, sometimes they'll use Gopala mantra, sometimes they'll use Dvarasakshara mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'm not sure if there is a standard set across the board in every temple in ISKCON. But whatever it is, it should be continued. It should be consistent. That's the main thing, because that's what the deity is being called. For my deity worship and when I do pratishtas, when I first started doing deity worship, I believe we use just Klim Krishnaya Namaha. But when we install deities and in my own worship, I use the Gopala mantra. And because of something actually Nrsimha Kavacha wrote on the old COM message board, probably 25 years ago, that made a really good point that, and I don't know what you think about it now, but that he prefers that mantra because this is the mantra that's given by the Guru. And so there's some direct connection there. So, but you have to see what's consistent in the temples that you're functioning in. But it's not that you can only use Gopala mantra. That's not the case. There are other mantras that you use for other deities, and you see what's been established in that temple, whether so say, for instance, you use Gora mantra, you use all these other mantras. Does that clarify the point?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I'm still of the same opinion, Brahma. because you receive it in Sampradaya. It's the mantra that comes in Sampradaya, therefore it has effect.
Exactly.
Whereas these other mantras, we may use them, but we're not getting them from the Guru. The mantra the Guru gives has potency. But also, because you were mentioning Hari Bhakti Vilas, I can't remember which Vilas it is, but Sanatana Goswami devotes a whole chapter or a whole Vilas to this mantra, and he states that this mantra is non-different from the deity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why wouldn't you use it, If you're worshipping a Krishna deity, if you're worshipping Jagannath or you're worshipping Krishna directly, why wouldn't you use that mantra?
Yeah.
Okay, the other mantras might be shorter, but this mantra is directly Krishna.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. And that's why sometimes people will do extra japa of that mantra. They'll do, more than that. And in other places, in really orthodox places, all the mantras that are used in deity worship are given by the Guru for that specific reason.
Yeah.
We don't have that practice. And it's not just an ISKCON thing that we don't do it, but many places Many sampradayas and other Gaudiya groups do not do that. The practice has fallen off.
Yeah. Shavapriya has a question also.
Yes.
Oh, it's from the
Telling us to
group
stop.
of devotees from Russia.
Huh?
From Russia, the devotees are asking if you could please share the link of the article you mentioned in the beginning.
Okay. I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, then I can post it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And one point I particularly appreciated also, Brahma Muhurta, was about regarding other sampradayas. And you were making the point that that generally they wouldn't be worshipping our deities in our temples because they don't have the mantra. And usually what I suggest, if devotees from, because sometimes you do come across temples where, Sri Vaishnava maybe has joined the community or something, they want to do worship in the temple. My tendency is to say, yeah, that's okay if they're chanting 16 rounds of Hare Krishna and they do have Gayatri Diksha. But yeah, I'm also cautious about that because, as you rightfully mentioned, is they would let us do worship in their temples.
Yeah.
But even in other Gaudiya temples, that you'll find, like in temples of the Gaudiya Mutt, how many Gaudiya Mutt temples would let an ISKCON devotee on the altar?
Oh yeah.
Even though it's the same sampradaya.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I think that's a really relevant point. And thank you for that.
Yeah, their conception of Radharani is very, if they even believe in it. These are important ideas. So it's a nice sentiment to be inclusive, but in certain ways we have our own inner life. We have the Guru gives the mantras in confidence. So deity worship is an intimate thing. Yeah,
and it's helped me to clarify my understanding of that also, because as you mentioned, like Sri Vaishnavas, even there's that story with the Ramanandis, and what's their sampradaya, the Ramanandi sampradaya, they're part of the Sri Vaishnavas too, aren't they?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So that there's that story when in Jaipur they were worshipping Radha Krishna, and the Ramanandis were insisting they take Radharani off the altar, and then the Ramanandis from Golpa, and then Baladev Vidyabhushan met them, and he produced the Govinda Bhashya and proved that that this was valid worship. So yeah, it's kind of difficult if you have someone from another sampradaya joining participating in our worship when they don't even accept it. They don't even accept the conclusions of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya.
Yeah, and they may not know that their philosophy is maybe at odds with it, because these are topics that are for that scholars discuss, and in some lay people know. Just like, for example, when I was in Sri Rangam and I was discussing with one Agama Acharya about explaining that we have Pancha Samskar, and he said, "Oh, I thought you people just chant Hare Krishna. I didn't realize you have initiation and everything." And I said, "Yeah, if you ask any of the people, they're not going to explain it like this to you." And he said, "Yes, same in Sri Vaishnavas. No one knows what any of these things are." He said, "It's just for our discussions." So it's there is that distinction what lay people, and some will accept Radharani and have a whole thing, but it's not the same conception. But I feel bad. Sorry to interrupt as well.
No, it's an important point, and I think it's good that you've raised this point, because then devotees can understand more about why we do what we do, and it's not just some dogma or doctrine. There is actually reasons behind what we're doing, and it's really important for devotees to understand that. And especially like the audience you're dealing with, they're all head pujaris, so it likely will come at some point where they have to answer this question. Well, can we allow someone else from another sampradaya to do worship in our temple? Well, do they really accept who the deity is? Do they have the mantra that's necessary for worshiping the deity? And so it's very, very good points. Any other questions at all? I'm not sure what's happening with Badrinarayan Maharaj. He's meant to be our next speaker. He was trying to contact me before, but any other questions at all? I'll just try calling him again.
May I ask one question? It's okay.
And to be clear, other sampradayas will have Gopala mantra. My point is, if they have, Sri Vaishnavas do use the Gopala mantra, but they may not all, it's specialized people would be initiated into these extra mantras, but their conception may be different. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering how important it is to have the knowledge and apply this practically in our daily worship, be it in temple or personally. How important are these mantras? Because as Kali Yuga is progressing, of course, the knowledge as is deteriorating, and also just chanting Maha Mantra is a big task for one in their daily life. So how relevant it would be now and in future to have this knowledge and apply it practically?
So the question is how practical or how important it is to understand what it is?
Understand the relevance and importance of these mantras, which are not traditionally given now. And
why is it not traditional?
It looks a little sophisticated to me, at least. Like there is simplified version.
ISKCON, who does deity worship, has the mantra.
Yeah, there are simplified versions also, or do we have to just take in everything is also my question. Like, do we have to establish a relationship with the deity while worshipping? Is it very relevant and important to know all the mantras, or is just the mood that's more important?
Well, yeah, my hope, if I'm understanding the question correctly, my whole point is that, yes, you have to know the mantra. That's the minimum adhikar for worshiping a deity, is having mantra diksha. I can't speak to what happens in the future, but I would say that if one doesn't have knowledge of the mantra, that practice will fall off because people don't understand the relevance of what the mantra is. So for instance, I think it's very common people get second initiation. They're like, okay, now I have second, now I can worship the deity. But there's no connection between why you have to have second initiation and what that relationship is between worshiping the deity. So after time, people will be like, well, it doesn't really matter having these mantras or doing japa of these mantras. That was just a formality. I just worship the deity. But because
it's not after time, Brahma, it's happening now.
Okay. So I'll
it's happening now.
All right, Janita, thank you very much, Hari.
Yeah, very, very good points, and I really appreciate your presentation. And I was thinking, because it was a little bit, I got the sense you were feeling a bit rushed there. Maybe we could, in a future Sangha, we could also revisit this topic, and it'd be good if you had some kind of like slideshow or something, so you could show a bit more clearly, structures and mantras and things like that, because it's something we need to understand. Is like especially in the temple, home worship. Prabhupada didn't seem to put so much emphasis on being Brahmin and things like that, but especially in the temple, there is certain qualification that's required to worship the deity, and we don't see that Prabhupada ever made a concession on that. And even we can see in the Sydney temple when he brought Radha Gopinath there, and there was only a few Brahmins in the yatra at that point in time. And when he installed the deities, he also did an initiation, and practically everyone in the temple got Brahman Diksha at that time. Even some of them had only been around for a very short time, like a few weeks and stuff like that. So, Prabhupada was willing to take the risk on himself rather than not follow the rules of the scripture, that you have to have mantra to worship the deity. So, I think it's really important for all of us to understand that clearly, that it's essential to have mantra to worship the deity in a temple, and not just the Maha Mantra. You've got to have Gayatri Diksha. So, thank you very much, Brahma, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Anytime. Haribol, with Prabhupada. Okay, so I've just heard from Bhadin Narayan Maharaj. He's actually just got out of hospital, and he's not well. And so what I propose to him is that he can take my topic in 2 weeks' time, which means I'm just going to do a quick presentation right now. I don't have any slides. I was going to have slides. Actually, just give me a second, and I'll see if I can find some pictures for you.